Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here, back with another video. Today's episode, we're taking a look at the Frost Knight for patch 11.15 and Mythic Plus. It's just generally a Season 2 guide for Frost Death Knight. You'll see here at the very top, we do have a patron now. If you guys do want to, we've been putting out a whole bunch of guides. If you guys do find any of these useful and you want to support the channel, go ahead and check it out. If not, that's totally fine. Just a like or comment is cool too. Absolutely no pressure whatsoever. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the guide. So as usual, let's go ahead and check out Frost Death Knight on Archon GG. So we're working with here. So as you can see, Frost DK is currently high B tier. So honestly, not a bad spot for Frost. We've seen a lot of seasons where Frost is left down below here in C tier. So not a bad season for Frost DK at all. And if we go down to sort by the DPS rankings, they're actually a lot higher than a lot of the other A tier specs, which is a little bit surprising, to be honest. So Frost DK is over Demo Lock, which is an A tier spec. They're over Arms Warrior, which is an A tier spec. So Frost DK, in my opinion, is sitting in a pretty good spot right now. Taking a quick look at some of the pros and cons here. We do bring a Battle Res through our Raise Ally. So some very useful utility there. We also have utility through Abomination Limb. So it's like a mass AOE grip, going to be very useful. Just for example, let's just say final boss of Theater of Pain, the little hands that you have to nuke down. A DK can mass grip all those in, and you guys can interrupt, do an AoE CC, whatever, and quickly get rid of them. And kind of just DK in general, we have pretty good defensives. We have our Icebound Fortitude. We also have our Death Strike. And we have Anti-Magic Zone. We have Anti-Magic Shell, which isn't even listed here. We're very good against magical damage, and that's very, I want to say, unique, because not many specs in the game are able to deter as much magical damage as this. The only other one I could think of is like Warrior with Spell Reflect. But for the most part, you're going to be one of the more tanky DPS specs. Now, with all that tankiness does come a con. We're one of the least mobile specs in the game, and we do lack some of the common group utility. We don't have like a group buff. We don't have a class buff. We don't have any group healing, anything like that. So typically, DK is expected to bring a lot of damage, their battle res, their unique utility, and just to be a tanky, reliable DPS spec. Now, there are multiple builds for Frost DK. I'm personally only going to go over the Obliterate build. I'm not going to go over the Breath of Sindragosa build. It's what I find to be more fun. I think it's probably better for a beginner anyways to run the Obliterate build. That's what these guides are more focused towards anyways, is more beginner players, not really advanced. So that's what we're going to cover today. So at the top of your tree, right, we have our Frost Strike. That's going to be our Runic Power Spender. We have our Obliterate, which is going to cost a couple runes, but generate Runic Power for us. We also have our Howling Blast here as well, which will apply our Frost Fever Disease. And that's kind of the main three spells that you'll kind of find in your core rotation, right? So very important to understand what those three do. Our main cooldown is going to be our Pillar of Frost. This is going to give us 30% strength for 12 seconds. And we have a couple things that kind of stem out from it. Nothing really that you need that's going to like impact our rotation or anything. Just mostly buffs to our Pillar of Frost. Another major cooldown here is going to be our Empowered Rune Weapon. This is on a 2-minute cooldown, going to give us 15% haste. And it's going to generate 1 rune and 5 runic power instantly and every 5 seconds for 20 seconds. So a lot of the times you'll be activating these two. You'll try to sync these two up as much as you can. Can be a little bit awkward, right? Pillar of Frost, 45-second cooldown. Empowered Rune Weapon, 2-minute cooldown. So a lot of the times they're not going to line up perfectly. But it's very important to get as much runic power and runes going through Empowered Rune Weapon while we are buffed through a Pillar of Frost. Right, we want to get as many abilities out as we possibly can while we have 30% more strength. So we'll try to sync those two up. We're also running Killing Machine here, which stems directly below our Obliterate. So our auto attack critical strikes have a chance to make our next Obliterate critically strike. If we do get a proc of Killing Machine, that's when we want to be obliterating. Talk about that a little bit more in the rotation section. And we also have a couple buffs that we're tracking as well. So one of them is going to be Unleashed Frenzy, and the other one's going to be Icy Talons. So both of these buffs can be maintained through our Frost Strike or Runic Power spending abilities. So Unleashed Frenzy is going to give us the stacking effect of strength. 2% stacks up to 3 times for 6% total. And then very similar over here with Icy Talons, Runic Power spending abilities increase your melee attack speed by 6%, stacking up to 3 times for 18%. So those are 2 buffs that you're going to be tracking. If they do fall off, go ahead and throw in a Frost Strike in there, or any Runic Power ability. But we're using Runic Power for the most part. We're using Frost Strike for the most part as our main Runic Power spending ability. Okay, looking at the Deathbringer tree itself, we are running Reaper's Mark. So there's a 45-second cooldown. It costs 2 runes, and for Frost, it will deal Shadow Frost damage and apply Reaper's Mark. Each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark. After 12 seconds, reaching 40 stacks, the mark will explode. Then Reaper's Mark travels to an unmarked enemy nearby if the target dies or explodes below 35% health when there are no enemies to travel to. This explosion cannot occur again on a target for 3 minutes. So this kind of has like that ping pong effect that's going to kind of bounce around in between different targets. And then down here at the bottom, we're running Exterminate. Okay, then we're also running Exterminate down here at the bottom. So after our Reaper's Mark explodes, your next 2 Obliterates cost 1 rune and summon 2 Scythe to strike your enemies. Basically, 1 Scythe is single target, 1 Scythe is AOE. So just a little bit more damage through running Exterminate. We're taking a couple other talents here as well. One thing specifically is Grim Reaper. So our Reaper's Mark will actually apply 3 charges of our Killing Machine. So we talked about earlier, Killing Machine, we can manually proc this through our Reaper's Mark, and we can get those critical strike, or those basically beefed up Obliterates. Right, Obliterate will be guaranteed to critical strike through Killing Machine. Nothing else here really that's going to affect our rotation or anything. Just kind of like passive buffs to like our Reaper's Mark. We have something called Soul Rupture. Just, again, additional damage through our Reaper's Mark. So nothing... I don't think there's anything else we need to cover here. Let's go ahead and get into the rotational stuff. So rotation priority here. There's this one section too, 1-hand or 2-hand weapon. So typically you're going to be running 2 1-hand weapons. If we take a look at the top 3 Frost DKs right now, they're all running 2 1-hand weapons. Nobody's running a 2-hand, so that's definitely going to be the move. So that's a pretty common question that comes up in our Frost DK guides. So hopefully that answers that. Okay, let's get into the rotation priority. So we talked about those buffs earlier. We have Icy Talons and Unleashed Frenzy. So those are 2 buffs that you want to keep up through your Frost Strike, right through one of our runic power spending abilities. We also have a disease that we apply, Frost Fever. And it looks like I have the wrong tooltip up here, so I'm going to correct that really quick. Okay, there we go. We got the correct tooltip now. So this is going to be the disease. So you want to keep that up as well as Icy Talons, Unleashed Fury. This is going to be your 2 main priorities in single target. Okay, we made a couple other changes for... I don't know what happened with this guide. Pillar of Frost nor Reaper's Mark got into the single target priority. But long story short, we're sending these 3 together, right? Empire Rune Weapon, Pillar of Frost, and Reaper's Mark are all going to 3 be sent together. We want to make sure that you're always pairing Reaper's Mark with Pillar of Frost when you can. Now, we have a 45-second cooldown and a 1-minute cooldown, so obviously they're not always going to overlap. But when they do, you know, you want to try to send this triage when everything kind of lines up. But you should be able to get every other Pillar of Frost, or excuse me, every other Empire Rune Weapon with your Pillar of Frost. Now, but most of your burst damage is going to be funneled into these 3 cooldowns. From there, you're going to be watching your Killing Machine procs. If you do get that proc, then you want to be spending an Obliterate with it. From here, you want to Frost Strike if you have 5 Razor Ice stacks. And then through Shattering Blade, if we remember, we will be able to consume those 5 stacks of Razor Ice, and they're going to basically burst out to do additional damage. So this is another thing that you'll want to be tracking with your, your normal buffs. And you want to try to Frost Strike when you get 5 stacks of Razor Ice. And procs with Howling Blast. Guys, with Rime is going to be Avalanche when we consume that Rime on our enemies, dealing some burst damage. It's very important for us to consume, and then if there's nothing else to press, just go ahead and Frost Strike or Obliterate if you do get capped on runes. Literally the exact same priority. The only difference, I guess it's not the exact same priority. We are using Death and Decay in AoE scenarios. It does cost a rune. It does cost runic power. Just make sure that you are pairing that Death and Decay with your Pillar of Frost. Yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. That's probably one of the more simple rotations I've had to cover on this channel. And it's really nice when both the single target and the AoE kind of line up like that. Let's go ahead and get into consumables. So we're going to be running Flask of Alchemical Chaos, extremely standard Flask, Tempered Potion, Healing Potion, Mana Oil, Augment Rune. Pretty much the same for all specs in the game, right? 90% of specs are running this. This exact same setup here. The same feast, right? Midnight Masquerade, everything stew. Culminating Blasphemite, and then a Masterful Ruby is what we're going to be running as our main gem. So we'll talk about that a little bit more once we get into secondary stats. In terms of our enchants, we're running Greater Rune of the Void Ritual. Again, almost all DPS specs are running this. And then depending on if you're running 2-hand or a main hand and offhand, you're going for Rune of the Fallen Crusader on a 2-hand, or Rune of Razor Ice and Rune of Fallen Crusader on the offhand. This is a very big reason that one hand outscales two hands, is because you can get 2 enchants instead of just 1. On the cloak and our bracelet, we're running avoidance. We're running main stat on the chest. We're going stormbound armor kit on the legs, stamina on the feet, and then we're going curse and radiant mastery on the rings. In terms of our embellishments, we're running dark moon sigil ascension and writhing armor banding. Very common across most specs right now. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the tier set. So our tier set will actually buff our Frost Strike and our Glacial Advance. We're not running Glacial Advance in this build, we're just running Frost Strike. But just to read it out, spells and abilities randomly grant Winning Streak, which increases the damage of Frost Strike and Glacial Advance. Triggering Frost Strike or Glacial Advance has a low chance to remove the Winning Streak. So that Winning Streak is just a stacking damage buff at 4% stacking to 6 times for 24% overall. And then to read out the bottom here, while Winning Streak is active, triggering Frost Strike or Glacial Advance has a chance to cast a free Frost Scythe at significantly reduced effectiveness. Frost Scythe also deals increased damage to your primary target. Losing Winning Streak grants a Murderous Frenzy, increasing mastery for 6 seconds. So you don't have to talent into Frost Scythe to get this proc, so don't worry about that. But basically, Frost Strike is going to proc these Frost Scythes at reduced effectiveness. And then when we do lose Winning Streak, we get stacks of Murderous Frenzy, which Murderous Frenzy right here is going to increase our mastery by 6%. Taking a look at the general tips here. We've covered most of this already, but if you want to review some of this on your own, go ahead. Just some quick tips there. Stat priority. Our mastery is Frozen Heart. If you're not sure what that is, increases the damage done of our frost abilities by 16%. And then going into stat priority, so our main secondary stat we're going to be focused on is our critical strike. So mostly that's due to Icy Torrent here. When we do critical strike, we're going to basically send out a torrent. We're going to do a bunch of AoE damage. That's going to be to any enemies that are standing in front of us. So critical strike just synergizes with our kit very well, especially for Mythic Plus. And it's also just really good. You know, we're putting a lot of runes, a lot of resources into our Obliterates. So when we send them, we want them to critical strike as much as we possibly can, because that's like our main ability. We're not sending like 1 to 2 Obliterates per second. You know, when we send them, we want them to hit hard. Then our Mastery Frozen Heart, this is going to be a little bit stronger for Deathbringer than Rider of the Apocalypse, because Rider of the Apocalypse has some like Unholy Disease spells. But our Mastery Frozen Heart is going to buff just about everything in our kit for Deathbringer due to all the Shadow Frost damage that it brings. And then finally down here, we have Haste versus Versatility. You'll go Haste for a little bit more damage, but you'll go Versatility for a little bit more survivability. All right, guys, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Again, if you learned anything from our guides, if they help you in any sort of way, we do also have a Patreon link. Again, no pressure at all, but it is there if you do want to help and support the channel. Even just a like, a comment, subscribe, whatever, really helps push us up in the algorithm. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.